Hello, I'm Devin Banerjee, and welcome to LinkedIn News Live, a show about the world of work and our place in it. This week, we are at the Milken Institute Global Conference in Los Angeles, speaking with business leaders about the state of their industries and of the world. This morning, we're focusing on finance, investing, and the global economy. Joining me now is Kamal Bhatia. He's COO of Principal Global Investors. Kamal, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here, Devin.
Let's start big picture. It's been a quite volatile start to the year in the markets, in the economic data. Why is that? And do you think it will continue?
So first of all, I think everybody is spooked about interest rates. And for the longest time, for almost 15 years, we've had a declining interest rate environment, Devin.
Right.
And interest rate is sort of the blood that drives the economy. And as people worry, as interest rates rise, there is a fear of recession. In our view, recession is unlikely. Growth will slow, and I think that is what has spooked most investors and individuals.
The Federal Reserve is trying to architect and engineer this soft landing. It's trying to rein in inflation, which is roaring so far this year, without a huge shock to the economy.
Yep.
How does the Fed do this successfully, in your view, and what's the likelihood that it pulls it off?
The Fed has a very tough task ahead of it because they have a single mandate to make sure they have inflation under control and employment is at full levels in the economy. Post-COVID, we have been at full employment for a while. So their singular focus now is to manage inflation, and they are trying to manage this very, very aggressively. And they will continue to do so because they have a target in mind. What that really means, Devin, is we have an economy that has very strong labor demand, more demand for individuals to work than the supply of individuals. The second piece I would highlight is growth is going to come down, but it's not going to be negative, i.e. we will still be growing, but not as fast as the last few years. So from the Fed's perspective, it's getting two different signals. It's getting a signal that the economy is heating up, whereas the economy is slowing. But if they purely focus on inflation, it is going to be a very hard inflation number.
Let's home in on financial markets for a moment. Principal Global Investors manages $580 billion. Let's talk about the stock market. And as investors and people out there look at relative value, meaning the United States versus, say, Europe or parts of Asia, where do you see relative value right now in the stock market?
Sure. I think there are probably two areas where we see most relative value change. For most investors, value over the last few years has been in growth stocks, tech being a big part of it. And then we see that changing. From our seat, I think there's going to be a bigger focus on quality growth rather than growth itself. And so there is more relative value in the concept of quality growth, and we could talk about industries that exhibit that. I think the other area, given that we are a fairly large global investor, we have clients in over 80 countries. We work with them locally, very closely. We do see international markets showing more relative value than US markets today for a variety of reasons, but that's definitely something we see happening more and more.
Define for our audience quality growth. You're talking about quality of earnings, persistence of earnings.
Correct. I think there are probably two measures that for your audience would be helpful. As you said, it's return on equity, it's quality of earning growth. That would be one aspect of it. The second aspect of it would be low levels of debt. In an environment where interest rates are rising very rapidly, even if you're growing, your cost of debt can overwhelm your earnings. And so we like companies that have low debt burden, but they also have earnings that show good persistence.
I just want to take a moment to say hello to viewers joining us in the stream. Isaac from South Africa, Lisa from California, Maureen from Arkansas, Yolanda from Texas. Thank you so much for joining us. Stick around with us for the entire hour. We're talking about finance, investing, and the global economy. Kamal, I want to talk about the industry, the investment management industry, and some real trends that you're seeing occur. Give us, for example, a bold prediction, if you will, for a trend or change in the investment management process or industry over the next couple of years?
A lot of people in asset management have had a mantra for a while, which is the only thing that matters is scale. And my view is scale is not same as relevance. Scale is not the only thing that creates value. A lot of people confuse scale with ability to have breadth or ability to have diversity as a business. So my view is scale is not relevance, and the concept is confusing.
Let's talk about technology in the industry, in the investment process itself. You were trained as an engineer, you have a master's degree in computer science. I'd love to hear, first of all, why you joined the investment management industry with that background.
Sure.
And also what role technology and data science and those skills play in the industry today.
Sure, absolutely. I'm very proud to be an engineer because one of the things it taught me was to be a design thinker. When you study engineering, you naturally learn how to analyze information, but also use that information to design, whether it's systems or organizations or products, better. And so I think the asset management industry is really ripe for more design thinking. It's a business that thrives really on three things. It's a business of markets, it's a business of talent, and it's a business of technology. And it's really about applying design thinking to all three dimensions. From my seat, I will just pick talent, given the audience you have here on LinkedIn, Devin. Talent is probably the number one driver in the money management business. Our investors engage with us, trying to understand what we create and value we create. Our own portfolio managers, analysts, our client-facing staff, it's all about humans for us.
Yeah.
The place where technology really is transforming our business is using data more and more to improve the efficiency of how we operate our business, but also use it to understand what our clients need better. So I would say technology's biggest impact is on our operations and our understanding of our client needs better.
Speaking of your operations and the human capital that underpins it,
Yes.
Principal is a huge employer. You were telling me 18,000 employees around the world. We just went through this, and we're still going through this pandemic period that has forced us all to rethink how we work. How has Principal rethought how its 18,000 people work?
Yep. It's a great question. And I think this process is still underway. But we started with two basic beliefs. One, before the pandemic, Devin, we had allowed work-life flexibility to our employees for the longest period of time. If you would allow me, I'll highlight for you, we are one of the very few companies that has won 10 years in a row Best Places to Work by Pension and Investments. And that's a very democratic award. Our employees vote on how we as an employer provide them benefits and the flexibility. And so for us, when COVID hit and post-COVID environment, we were ready to operate in sort of the hybrid world. Fast forward, we still continue to do that while encouraging more and more of our employees to come into office for two reasons. A, for client interaction, we encourage them to really be there because we want our clients, like this conference, to meet each other, talk to each other, because that's how you learn and that's how you provide value. Two, we are a growing company, so we bring on more and more employees every year. And it's important for somebody early in their career to engage with senior professionals. So I personally made a commitment. I have been going into office for over a year now, consistently. And my view is that's how you pass on insights and experience to the next generation. So I believe the leaders need to own this, and it's important for firms to work in a hybrid world.
Kamal Bhatia, thank you so much for joining us on LinkedIn News Live.
Thank you, Devin. Pleasure to be here.
That was Kamal Bhatia, COO of Principal Global Investors. Now, in August, LinkedIn News is releasing a new series about success, setbacks, and sandwiches. It's titled Between the Bread with Nina Melendez. Here's a sneak peek at one episode with author and global spiritual leader Deepak Chopra.
And then you can just tie it around your back. Do you cook?
I used to cook a lot. These days, I let my wife do it.
We're going to make sandwiches.
Yes.
Start putting in the paneer. You have been so successful. Is there anything about your character or your personality that you think has
so.
really, what is it?
Indian accent.
When you started your career, I'm curious if there's anything about those very early years that inform the person that you are today.
One day when I was in the village, a young boy was brought to me for a psychiatric examination. I said, why do you bring him? He said, he's gone mad. I said, why? He said, there are men on the moon. I said, it's true. I said, but the moon, that's our goddess. We worship the moon. But then I realized that everybody has their own reality. You have to be independent of critics.
Independent of critics.
Totally. And flattery.
I like flattery, I won't lie.
But
is that my ego talking?
Yeah, but then if you like flattery, you'll be afraid of criticism too.
Huh.
I was inspired to write the book after I read a quote from Bob Marley. Some people are so poor, all they have is money.
What do you suppose is one of the reasons people don't achieve their potential?
Limiting beliefs. I'm not good enough. It's very well made, and that's almost very well
That
made.
was my fault. Shall we eat?
Yeah,
Speaking of jeans?
absolutely.
This is very good.
I've never missed in 20 years.
Deepak, I need to talk to your wife about your roti rolling skills.
To LinkedIn News Live at the Milken Institute Global Conference. This hour, we are discussing finance, investing, and the global economy. I'm so pleased now to be joined by Q-Song Lee. He's CEO of Carlyle. Q, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
Q, as part of your role, you speak with CEOs, CIOs, boards of directors all the time. Tell us what generally is on their minds these days as we're 4 or 5 months into the year.
Yeah, so clearly the environment is changing. They're seeing all the noise, inflation, rates going up. And obviously those are the environmental issues, the geopolitical concerns that they're trying to understand. But I think the other thing that CEOs are doing is they're trying to figure out how do we change? How do we create change in organizations? Because they're seeing different generation of employees. They're seeing different ways to work. They're seeing the need to speed up their decision making in their organizations as the environment changes. And so it's both external issues at play, but also very much internal issues. And this is what's keeping CEOs up at night.
And as you speak with them, you're hearing about their concerns, as you mentioned, about inflation and the economy, things like that. Let's talk about the impact of that on the investment opportunity set for Carlyle. Where has Carlyle been most active? Where generally do you see investment opportunities right now for the firm?
Yeah, so the first things first, you have to make sure your portfolio is taken care of, right? And so we have over 300 companies approximately, and we want to make sure those companies are in good position to navigate through this tough environment. And so far, so good. First quarter, their sales are up, their operating metrics are doing well. There's a lot more resilience in our portfolio and the portfolio construction we have. So with that as a solid foundation, the key question is, where are the opportunities going to be? And start big picture, change, volatility, disruptions, create opportunity. And at Carlyle, we have a very broad platform, private equity, private credit, solutions, real estate, infrastructure. We're around the world. We're the most global company in our industry.
Yeah.
And we have very deep industry expertise around the world. Our culture connects all of this together. And so the question is, how do we as a firm work together to see where the next opportunities and what the trends are going to be? Right now, we're very focused on trying to understand where's energy transition going. We think there's big opportunity there. We don't believe in divesting. We believe in investing our way through the energy transition, and we think our platform is perfectly will play to that theme. Second, there's clearly a new era of globalization occurring. Regions are being strengthened and supply chains are being changed as you see ecosystems emerge in strengthened regions. How do we take advantage of that through our architecture of our private equity platform, which is perfectly set up in those regions? And then finally, there's volatility. And volatility is here to stay for an extended period of time. What's the best way to play volatility? And in our minds, it's through private credit, and for the solutions aspect of our business.
Q, early last year, you laid out a plan to transform the firm. You've been
Yeah.
CEO for a few years now. Tell our viewers what that, at a high level, what was that plan and how far along are you in
Right.
that progress?
Look, we have a dominant, powerful global private equity business. And several years ago, we decided, how do we expand to diversify in private markets, broadly speaking? And we've now made tremendous progress in our global credit platform, about $140 billion of AUM now, in our infrastructure platform, in our solutions platform, in real estate, in our insurance solutions business, an acquisition that we made called Fortitude several years back. And here we sit here today, 2/3 of our business now, our AUM, sits outside of traditional corporate private equity. We've created more diversification, we're creating more ways to grow, and we're creating more resilience in our earnings stream because of that diversification, but because we're targeting those areas that present real strategic upside and growth for us.
In the old days, these firms were kind of referred to as private equity firms. They're very different than that, as you're saying today. There are these diversified alternative asset managers with the rise of private capital.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, David, I think you hit it right on. It's the industry continues to evolve and expand and broaden. And I am very focused on positioning Carlyle to benefit and maintain leadership position as we diversify our platform and diversify our breadth, not only globally, but across all asset class strategies. I think it's fair to say the role of the private markets just continues to grow in the economy, and it's the broadly defined private markets that I think is driving and fueling the growth as we diversify.
Q, you said something really interesting a few minutes ago. Culture at the firm underpins everything you do. Now, of course, we've just gone through, or we continue to go through this rethink in culture and the nature of work in organizations everywhere with the pandemic. How did that affect the nature of work at Carlyle and its culture?
Sure. Look, culture is the most important thing at any business. We can talk strategy all you want. At the end of the day, my strategy is to have the best culture, have the best people at Carlyle, and I know that'll position us well no matter what comes at us and no matter where we're going. So we're very focused, the leadership team, I am very focused on constantly rejuvenating, refining, and adapting our culture so that we can attract the best people, retain them, train them, give them a sense of purpose, and motivate them as they develop their careers. Now, I think the way Carlyle managed through COVID is a testament to our culture. Strong partnership values, incredible desire to help each other, right? Connecting globally in a multicultural way. We're the most global firm, we're the most multicultural. We are the most diverse of all firms. As you know, I'm very big on pushing for diversity at Carlyle because I think it expands our thinking and makes for much better decision making. And that enabled us to work together to think about how to best perform, because it has to be based on a desire to perform. And how do we manage through COVID? I think here we sit here today, it's not about a returning to, and it's not about a picking one or the other. It's about embracing where's the future going. And for us, our future is in hybrid. The work environment needs to be flexible. Work environment needs to appreciate that this is the future and this is the way we work. And so we've been very thoughtful about designing a flexible approach to the work environment, which incorporates the best of physical with the best of virtual. We've repurposed how we train people, how we onboard folks, how we do certain types of meetings. And thus far, I knock on wood, our leadership team does a great job. It has been very well received at Carlyle.
Q, in this lobby right now, every few minutes, you'll hear the term ESG or climate or sustainability.
Sure.
It is very hot right now. Is it hot because it's a fad, or is this an underlying persistent way, a lens, if you will, through which you and your peers and the investment management industry will invest going forward?
Sure. Honestly, it's hot because that's what everybody thinks they ought to be talking about. And they're very focused on the what and the how of ESG. This is what I have to do. This is how I'm doing it. Obviously, at Carlyle, we've done a tremendous amount of things on the what and how. But I think the reason why we have something special something very different, is our ESG approach is grounded in the why ESG matters. And if a company and a culture doesn't appreciate why are we really doing this, I think it never really takes hold. And for us, having a very focused mentality on trying to improve everything we are associated with, not only drive revenues and manage costs, but improve diversity at boards, drive better sustainable climate practices, link our financing so that the lower the emissions footprint, the lower cost of capital we can acquire, drive compensation in careers based on the ability to have more inclusive teams and to promote diversity. I mean, it's everything. And the reason it's everything and so integrated into our culture is it's mindset. And it's about making the best decisions possible. Carlyle is in the judgment business. We are an investor. We have to make great judgments on behalf of our clients. We can't make great decisions unless we have a diverse set of views around us and we have a mindset of total improvement all the time. If we can foster that culture and bring in people who appreciate that, I have every confidence in the world we're going to be making the best decisions and making the best and drive performance. And that's why for us, ESG is more than a buzzword. This is cultural. It's the mindset, it's the approach, it's the why that's so important. And I think everybody at Carlyle is appreciating this is why we are doing this. It improves us, it improves the way we think, it improves our companies, it improves our performance.
Peter, thank you so much for joining us today on LinkedIn News Live.
Devin, this was a great conversation. Thank you for having me.
That was Kyusong Lee, he's CEO of Carlyle. Now, over 25 years ago, when star athlete Alex Rodriguez began his entrepreneurial journey, one of his first major steps was buying a home. Today, A-Rod is the head of Monument Capital Management, a real estate firm that owns thousands of rental units across the U.S. In an interview with LinkedIn News' athlete-focused series Next Play, the baseball icon shares how he built a business empire.
I always had a vision about life after baseball, and I've always had this great thing that I wanted to win in the clubhouse, but I also wanted to win in the boardroom.
Over a 22-year pro baseball career, Alex Rodriguez became a perennial All-Star, World Series champion, and 3-time league MVP. He also earned over $400 million in salary, and that's not even counting all of his endorsements. Now, over a half-decade removed from retirement, the superstar athlete has turned into a superstar entrepreneur. Among his long list of business interests, A-Rod is the head of Monument Capital Management, a real estate firm that boasts over 10,000 rental units. Here's how Alex Rodriguez made property ownership his next play.
Center field, well hit, at the track, he's done it again! Can you be hotter than Alex Rodriguez?
When exactly did you become Alex Rodriguez, the real estate investor?
I mean, I started thinking about it when I was probably 10 years old. My mom being a longtime renter, I felt, for better or worse, I kind of became an expert being a tenant. And I always dreamed about, one day changing places with the landlord. And about a decade or so later, I had an opportunity to buy a small duplex. I was in my early 20s. I bought that down here in South Florida for about $250,000. I needed about $48,000 down payment, and off we went.
Today, Alex's boardroom is in Miami, Florida, which is both his hometown and home base of Monument Capital. The firm is a subsidiary of A-Rod Corp, the holding company through which he has made so many of his investments over the past 2 decades. How big of a role does real estate play in your portfolio today?
I would say our focus at A-Rod Corp in real estate, I would say, is a hair over 50% on real estate. And in real estate, we do a lot of things. We're fully integrated. We have a multifamily component. We have hospitality with hotels. And over the last 3 or 4 years, we've been very aggressively buying single family houses for rentals all over the Southeast. So those are the 3 things we do in real estate. We also have a pretty significant construction company, and all 3 companies basically work together very, very well.
So Alex, one of the things that a lot of people wonder about athletes after they retire is what are they doing and how exactly are they doing it? Can you explain your routine when it comes to running your real estate firm?
One of the things that I live by is VCP, vision, capital, people. And I run all my businesses the same way. Number one, I have a crystal clear view of what we want Monument to be. One of the best platforms in multifamily apartments. We go out and we put in hundreds of millions of dollars of capital to invest in multifamily, mainly all over the Southeast states. And then we go out and recruit the best people in the world to go run the firm.
Outside of his investments with Monument Capital, A-Rod most recently led a purchase of the Trump International Hotel in DC, and in the past year became a co-owner of the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's these type of big wins that have made him worthy of sitting at the table with the world's best entrepreneurs. But of course, no successful business career comes without glaring mistakes, which Alex says is all a part of the process of getting better over time. What is the most painful lesson you had to learn in business?
You know, Joe, it's very much like baseball, right? Like today I feel like I have a PhD in baseball and I've been studying it for, almost 40 years. But if you ask me a question when I was a rookie, I was only 18 years old, a few months removed away from my high school prom. I was a novice and I was nervous and I was excited. And the same answer goes early on in my real estate days. I really didn't know much. I think early on in 05, 06, 07, we were aggressively buying real estate. We bought about 5,100 units between Houston, Texas, and Florida. And some of those loans I personally guaranteed. And it took me about 2 or 3 years to unwind that. And, to this day, we're still very good with the banks. Those banks are still our lenders today. But never again do I personally guarantee on any loan, because that can single-handedly take you down.
So Alex, I wanted to end this interview with some advice. What is something you'd say to an athlete today if they're looking to make their next play off the field?
You don't have to know all the answers. You can put one step in front of the other, know for sure that there may be mistakes made along the way, but as long as you go in eyes wide open and you're willing to learn, I think is a step well taken.
Welcome back to LinkedIn News Live. We're at the Milken Institute Global Conference, spending the hour talking about finance, investing, and the global economy. I'm very excited now to be joined by Mark Rowan. He's CEO of Apollo Global Management, one of the largest global alternative asset managers with $500 billion under management. Mark, you recently completed your first year as CEO of Apollo. Tell us, what are you most proud of and what are you eager to tackle next?
Well, it's humbling. Let's start with that. But no, it was actually great. First year, really about just setting us up for success. Setting us up with the people, the culture, and the plan. I mean, I think in terms of learning, a thing I took out of it, I actually can't do anything. It's not literally true, but it's mostly true. But what I can do is I can change the way people think and also create the style in which we're going to run the business. And our business is a very entrepreneurial business. So articulate the plan, be very specific. It's actually on our website and it's about 5 hours if you suffer from insomnia. Articulate the cultural and cultural expectations.
Yeah.
And then free people to do business. Let's run the business entrepreneurially. I think that is kind of our positioning. Large enough to do anything, but yet small enough where we're a family, we're a partnership, we behave like entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I've heard you say something really interesting about being CEO, which is it's not particularly difficult work, it's just a lot of work. Is that correct?
It's absolutely the case. If I simplify our business down to what we do, yes, we need a strategy, but I often say culture trumps strategy all the time. Where does culture come from? And where does our business come from? Well, I think about what we offer our clients, and it's only judgment. It's the only thing we offer them. And therefore, to have judgment, I think you need to be with us for a long time, seeing what we do and what we don't do over a variety of market cycles, to see how we deal with conflicts, to see how we deal with ethical situations. So once you're there, I want you to spend your whole career. Therefore, I want to be the single best place to be a partner in the financial services industry. That's how we pay you. That's how you are excited about what we do. It's mission, it's purpose, it's style. And if you're happy as a partner, the principals are going to be happy and the associates are going to be happy. Yeah. It's ironic. People always say start at the bottom. I actually think in our organization, start at the top and make sure the culture carriers are happy.
I would love to get into how the pandemic has affected this, which we'll do in a few minutes. I want to ask you, Mark, you spend a lot of time speaking with huge institutional investors around the world, stewards of the largest pools of capital, pension funds, endowments, sovereign wealth funds, huge pools of capital. As you speak with them and they're evaluating how to allocate their huge pools of capital, what challenges do they face today, do you think?
Well, look, the challenges at the moment may have been different than the challenges they have faced over the last decade. But if you think about what's happened in our country since 2008, basically the printing press has been running nonstop. We've had very easy financial conditions. We've had lots of liquidity. The Fed balance sheet has ballooned. Yeah. And the likely outcome, stocks up, rates down. It's all been achieved. How much of that is beta, market movement? How much of that is alpha? Remains to be seen. So now we're entering a period of time where that seems to be running in reverse. The Fed is hugely concerned of inflation getting out of control. We saw announcements today where they're going to start liquidating their balance sheet. And so I think that sophisticated investors understand they're setting themselves up for a different type of market going forward. In terms of what we do, we are a provider of alternatives. Alternatives used to mean private equity. Right. They now mean nothing other than an alternative to publicly traded stocks and bonds. Yeah. And what's happened in markets over the past 14 years is public markets, particularly the debt market, has become all beta. So if these institutions want excess return per unit of risk, which is what an alternative does, they're going to need to step back from public markets. And for us, that's meant yield and fixed income replacement. Okay. We are by far the largest provider of fixed income replacement in the alternatives world.
Yeah. Mark, there's a debate going on today, and it has been for years, about individual investors. Well, I'm talking about non-accredited investors, but let's just talk about even wealthy individuals having more access to these alternative capital providers and to private assets in general. Is that happening? Do you think it should be happening? And what are the drivers?
Look, this is another massive trend taking place in our business, the whole democratization of alternatives. And it's happening, and it's happening in size. And it's not just regulatory shift. It's not just market structure shift. It's also technology. Some things we don't often say. 15, 20 years ago, when we offered our first alternative product to retail, our retail product was not reflected on your brokerage statement. Right. Your broker needed to pull a separate piece of paper out of a drawer. Fast forward 20 years, everything's online. It's fully integrated. You feel closer to us because you see our tutorials. You can understand what we say. You can understand what we think. But we're in the first inning. And what I mean by that is this has been, last 2-3 years have been unbelievable in terms of the take-up of alternative investments by individuals. But mostly what they're buying are things that have already existed, but they're getting institutional fees for the first time. Right. I think the promise here is you're going to see products created specifically for this marketplace. And I would not be surprised if an individual's portfolio is 50% or more alternatives in the next 5 years. But again, the definition being an alternative to publicly traded stocks and bonds, not risk. Right. Because I believe alternatives exist from AA all the way down to equity. And most people can afford to step back from the public markets to some extent for a portion of their wealth.
Mark, one thing both individual investors and big institutions care about more and more is sustainable investment offerings. Very exciting announcement I saw from Apollo in February, a sustainable investing platform plan. You're planning to deploy $100 billion or more this decade in energy transition and decarbonization investments. Why?
That's the direction of travel. So I look back 3 years. The last 3 years, we've put out $20 billion to energy transition. And I do believe we're going to have an energy transition. What's going on geopolitically is making it even more clear that hydrocarbons are not over. There's going to need to be investment going forward, but we are inevitably in a transition. The amount of capital that is required to accomplish this transition in our country and worldwide dwarfs anything we've ever seen before. And most of that capital is yield, or it's hybrid, and some of it is equity. And so for us, capitalizing on the 20 billion we've already put out, building this platform, I think is simply where the business is going. And I fully expect this to be among the largest categories of asset class out there. The capital need here is enormous.
Wow.
Not to mention, it's the right thing to do.
Mark, final question. We talked about culture underpinning everything you do. How did the pandemic impact culture and the nature of work at Apollo?
Look, I'll look at it superficially first. We obviously learned we didn't all need to be together every day and that we could work from anywhere. And that has carried over in terms of what we do. We are now additional offices, Greenwich, Connecticut, Miami, West Palm Beach, and I will not be surprised if we have other offices. We are now fully back in the office, which for us is 4 and 1 for our investment professionals and 3 and 2 for the rest of our firm.
Okay.
But that's the positive of it, the flexibility, the learning we've had of it. The negative, and it's not a negative, we learned we are an apprenticeship business. There's an awful lot of power and magic that happens in our office. How does someone really understand the nuances of our business?
Yeah.
It's in person. The learning. It is our promise. And so we will continue to be a hybrid culture. We want to outperform. We want to be entrepreneurs. We want to work as a team.
Yeah.
We want to have fun. It's very hard to have fun over Zoom.
It's a good place to end it. Mark, thanks for joining us on LinkedIn News Live.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
That was Mark Rowan, who's CEO of Apollo Global Management. Now, entrepreneur and television personality Mark Cuban is best known for his business acumen and savvy deals, but having a nose for it is not as intuitive as it may seem. Here he is speaking with LinkedIn editor-in-chief Dan Roth about how entrepreneurs can gain traction and find the next big thing in business.
If I was, 18, 19, 20, 21, any age for that matter, and looking for new ways to compete, I wouldn't be thinking of a new token. I wouldn't be thinking of a new NFT marketplace. I wouldn't be thinking of a new DeFi host or hub. I would be thinking of new ways to take existing business processes and apply smart contracts to them and potentially DAOs to be able to compete with the incumbents. Just like fintech what impacted banking, I don't want to say fully disrupted, but just like fintech had a significant impact on how banks do their work, I think crypto is going to have the same type of impact on business processes across the board. And then the other thing that I would mention is artificial intelligence. Where we're at right now is there's two types of companies in this world. There's companies who are great at AI and everybody else. And you need to be, if you're really going to get ahead, and scale to be very, very big, you need to be good at AI. You don't need it to start a business. You don't need it to compete with a small business. But if you're going to get big and you want to compete with the behemoths, you are going to have to be good at AI.
Welcome back to LinkedIn News Live. We are at the Milken Institute Global Conference. This hour, we are talking about finance, investing, and the global economy. I'm very excited now to be joined by Daphne Kiss, again on our show, the CEO of Worldcon University. Daphne, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Worldcon University focuses on many things, but financial engineering and data science skills education.
Yes.
Tell us what the state of education is for these skills, financial engineering and data science, and what are the opportunities ahead?
Yeah, well, so we have a master's in financial engineering, which is now fully accredited and entirely free, entirely online. And then we have a data science, very project-oriented 16-week course that really focuses on learning Python inside virtual machines where people are learning coding by addressing problems, the housing situation in Mexico City, etc., issues like that. And then back to the master's program, really learning the kinds of skills that industry is looking for these days. Financial engineering is basically the intersection of financial management, computer science, and data science. Obviously extremely relevant, very high in demand skills. And we are just big believers that that's really sort of a degree in the future, not just for the finance funnel, but actually, huge opportunity. I mean, people who are in financial management, they may not actually be coding in Python. They really need to understand the genesis, the orientation of the data that they're using, and to really, that's the way value will be added, whether that's in finance or agriculture or health services or education. So really a big believer is that this is a very expansive opportunity and that there couldn't be more relevant skills, coming up for all of us.
They're hugely in-demand skills. The CEOs of the 3 investment firms we just had on the show have mentioned this as well. These are also hard skills. What about soft skills? What's the right balance there for people entering the industry?
Yeah, so I like to use the term durable skills because those are regardless of the position you're in which you might be called on for your so-called hard skills. So, durable skills are critical thinking. Durable skills are communication. And we've tried really hard. We're just recently upgraded our curriculum to really use critical thinking skills so that students are not just mechanically working with the material, but critically thinking, what's its applications? How is it relevant? And then the other thing we found, because ours is a 10 course, culminating in a capstone 2-year master's program.
Okay.
And for example, in the capstone, we found huge disparity. We have students all in 90 countries around the world. 90. And so people come with very different skills. And you have people collaborating, someone in Ethiopia collaborating with someone in Singapore. And they come with different levels of skills. So we've put in place a non-credit bearing, but required course in presentation skills. Okay. How do you communicate to your audience? How do you sort of, pare down the essential data that you need to get your message to your audience? So those are soft skills, so called, and again, are hugely relevant in people being effective, not just in possessing their talents, but in being able to express them, communicate them, execute on them. So we're trying very hard in something that is traditionally so finance, computer science, very narrow, and recognizing that talent needs to be able to collaborate, work together, teams across the globe. That's what the future looks like. So.
Daphne, as you know, the pandemic has changed so much.
Yes.
It has accelerated certain trends that were already in place. Mm-hmm. It has put some other trends on pause. What has it done for skills-based education, the content of it, the delivery of it, the engagement with it by students?
Right.
What has the pandemic done?
Well, I like to say we were on Zoom before the pandemic. It's, that's the way our students have communicated for most of the time that the program has been in place. So we've been using those tools for a long time. And we're finding now that being our digitally native origin is actually quite advantageous because we're not trying to take a brick and mortar model and, transpose it to a digital environment. We're appreciating that it is digitally native and there's different ways that you build community. Okay, how do you create a virtual student center? How do you create something? Again, that's a metaphor more than we like to call it a piazza. In a sense, a place where people come together, apart from the individual skills that they're acquiring. How do we broaden and basically curate an experience for them that is, across the globe and that is again, highly relevant? And the thing I would say is that I think, nobody's going back. At the least, people are going to have a very blended educational experience. But people need to learn how to learn in that digital environment. And I think that's one of the challenges. And I think it's one of the advantages of people who can get through that and be persistent in those environments are the ones who are going to be successful. And there's also, of course, a whole discussion going on about how you recognize those skills.
Yeah.
Right. The whole sort of the World Economic Forum is working on a taxonomy for digital skills. Others are making efforts to create a standard so that both employers and students
Yeah.
or learners can aggregate and bring their skills together.
You mentioned employers, Daphne. As we think about closing this gap of skills-based education, what is the balance of the roles of employers, of the not-for-profit sector, of the government?
Yes.
Does everyone have a role? Are some roles more important than others?
Well, I do think like the collaboration that we express is so essential to all of this. I do think public partner, and the private sector are hugely important. Well, at the university, we've been the huge beneficiaries of our founders' support, and now that needs to grow. It's time to scale and to find other partners who want to embark on this. And I think that's a model that will certainly be applied and replicated elsewhere, as it should be. Because again, people are aligned. Well, no, institutions are aligned. Now we need to get the individuals who are responsible at those institutions to get aligned. Things like what we've seen in the last few years, that now global HR leaders are also diversity and equity leaders, as it should be, right? Because those are not, one is not the do good and the other is profit.
Yeah.
They really have to come together. And so I think it behooves corporations and the private sector in general to align those incentives so that everyone's on the same page.
I just want to tease something out a little bit.
Yes.
You said institutions are aligned, but the people who run it are not. Are you saying that maybe on paper, institutions say they believe in these things and reskilling and upskilling, but their people may not be walking, the leadership may not be walking the walk all the time?
Well, the leadership, and I think, the people who are actually doing the jobs, they haven't, people traditionally use the institutions that the people in this room come from, all right, as a proxies for the kinds of skills. The reality is that people who come from those institutions and are hired by these institutions, they have capabilities. They don't necessarily have the skills. So now as you develop a workforce that's very skill-based, how do you acknowledge that? So for example, how do we make sure that the quality of our online program is on par? Not because we've partnered with Princeton, but because we've built something that in and of itself is of high quality, is measurable by employers. And then on the employer side, that the people who are responsible for hiring are incentivized and aligned to have a broader view of where to acquire the talent from. Because whether it's here or at WEF, I mean, part of what's inspired me over these years is I got the talent, all right? We have, and in your audience, for example, there's a huge amount of talent.
Yeah.
The issue is not the talent. The issue is how do we bring it together in a way that's mutually aligned with shared outcomes and values.
Yeah,
So,
connecting talent to opportunity.
opportunities, exactly.
Daphne, one of the reasons I love speaking with you is in your role as CEO of Worldcon University and outside of that role, you spend a lot of time working with, mentoring entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, and you have a focus on women-led entrepreneurship. Give us a sense, what is the state of things in women-led entrepreneurship? How are things trending? Are you optimistic?
I am optimistic. Again, as some of these things we just discussed, when there's sort of a shared value alignment, I think certainly increasingly I've heard from companies here that I've met that they really are setting up dedicated funds that are focused on equity and diversity. So I think that's very promising. There's a long way to go. And I think, certainly there's an increasing number of, for example, VC funds and funding for women-led companies. But if you look at, and in all candor, I don't have the correct numbers, but it is very, very shy of what it could and should be. So I think some of it again is just bringing these forces together. So I know for many women entrepreneurs, as it is for every entrepreneur, young entrepreneur, you have a certain set of talent, and how do you aggregate around you the balance of what you need to effectively grow and be appealing to investors, find a product market fit, do all of that work. I was talking to someone last night, and he said he was talking. It's an institutional, group, whatever, and they said they have a diversity fund, but we're very invested in seed and Series A. I said, so could you tell me what your definition of seed and Series A is? And he said, they're already in market. Now, I come from a long world of entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs. Seed is not
in
market.
market, yeah.
Okay, seed is that leap of faith that helps an inspired, talented entrepreneur come to market.
Yeah.
So that's part of it too. Is how do we fill that early gap? And I do, from the stats I've read, some of that funding has gone down. So I don't know. I certainly don't expect the institutionals to come, really give you that first 250K, but we really need to fill that gap as well, and then be well aligned with what they refer to as seed and Series A. When you need another, 2.5 million or 10 million to actually be successful. So
Daphne, coming full circle to where we started.
Yes.
For those joining us on this show who are early career professionals, or really any professionals looking to upskill, reskill, maybe
Yes.
they're midway through their career and they're saying, financial engineering, data science skills, I see these things in demand, I want to take the next step. How should they think about that if maybe their employer is not providing that resource?
Well, come to Worldcon University. It's all free and really is designed for people who are talented. I'll tell you that a lot of our students are actually, it's quite the bell curve, and in the middle is people who are 29 to 40 years of age and who are basically already have degrees. Some of them actually have advanced degrees, perhaps in other industries, and now recognize that this is a huge opportunity. May come from academia, have a degree in applied physics, and say, hey, wait a minute, I can use the skills in this marketplace and, not be a adjunct professor and actually join the marketplace where there's so much opportunity and so much need.
Yeah.
So
much opportunity ahead. Daphne, thanks for joining us today on LinkedIn News
Thanks.
Live. That was Daphne Kiss, CEO of Worldcon University, joining us for a second time on this show at the Milken Institute Global Conference. That does it for this hour of LinkedIn News Live here at the conference. Join us again at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for a conversation with Asian Pu, Barbara Humpton, and others about their perspectives on the state of work today. I'm Devin Banerjee. Thank you for watching LinkedIn News Live.